Have you ever wanted to talk to the head of a major dive certification agency? Find out the why, how, who, and what's going on in their world and what we should be expecting? Then you're in the right place. This is an interview that you will want to watch all the way to the end because we're doing a deep dive with Brain Carney today, President and CEO of ITI, otherwise known as SDI, TDI, ERDI, and PFI. Brian was one of the key people behind the scenes of some of the best scuba diving education in the world. From both technical and recreational diving to free diving and even emergency services, ITI is at the forefront of the industry. We've got some surprises for you as well, so make sure you watch all the way to the end. Now, again, my name is Benjamin Hadfield, and I'm a technical diving instructor with Teach Me to Dive, connecting divers with quality instructors, dive shops, dive locations, and dive agencies for training. Brian, thank you so much for your time today.
I'm happy to talk to you about everything that goes on in the day-to-day of working at the organization.
Awesome. So let's just jump into it. How did you become involved in scuba diving?
Uh, I grew up on the water, fishing and swimming with my parents in Cape Cod. They both were extremely aquatic orientated people. They met each other for their passion of the ocean and involved in it. It's actually passion where some of that where it came from. My mother was part of the original team that did and worked discovering and mapping the Mid-Atlantic Ridge in the Atlantic Ocean. So she was a computer scientist at Columbia University and was out on the research boats, literally just watching the data and programming the data as it came on. And that passion for the ocean was instilled in me. And I grew up staring at a fish tank and said, I got tired of the fish tank, got a mask, and chased freshwater eels in ponds for years, and then ultimately ended up on Cape Cod, happening to do what they had at the time was a dolphin swim at a research center there, and the guys taught me how to dive right after that. And halfway through my dive class, he offered me a job. I was 13 years old at the time, and my job consisted of helping him clean the tanks at the aquarium because I was small enough to fit through the hole at the top to scrub the windows. So that's how I got my start, literally cleaning the inside of fish tanks and um, just blowing bubbles. So at the very, very beginning. From there, I ended up I went to the University of Rhode Island and continued my passion for the ocean and worked on the policy side. I got a degree in marine affairs and maritime law. But while at the University of Rhode Island, I became a diving professional. And I didn't know at the time when I applied there and everything that URI was a mecca of diving, very qualified diving professionals with their research diving school there. And I trained under a team of instructor trainers for 2 years, and then right after that 2 years, I was hired as a head diving professional for the scientific diving program my sophomore year in college, and I worked for a gentleman by the name of John McAniff, who created the National Underwater Data Collecting Center, and that way he was Dan before there was a Dan, before Peter Bennett got started. So if somebody had an accident underwater, he did the investigation. So mentoring under someone like him I mentored under him for 7-8 years, and I learned an awful lot associated with that.
That is amazing. Cleaning tanks at 13? Now, with a family that was already into ocean research, it's amazing to hear stories of strong women doing research even back then. Now, again, what organization was she with?
Columbia University.
Oh,
She
cool.
in the '60s, she managed to get a scholarship and worked for their research group there. Um, it's pretty amazing. She told me stories about it. My mom passed away a year ago last year, and we were looking through stuff and trying to find. She showed me script soundings of it years ago. We're still digging through stuff to try to find it, but it's just an amazing experience. And then I went digging last year and found publications where she's referenced in it and stuff. It was just really, really cool. So that, and as a kid, because of her passion, I grew up going through marshes and digging up clams and all sorts of stuff. It was always about what kind of critter could you find on it. I don't know if we ever cleaned when we came back from the beach. We didn't go to the beach to sit there in the sand. We went to the beach in the marshes to dig around and find critters. And we were following my mother. Okay. So it was not a matter of whether or not we did it as kids. It was my mom was the first one in. So that passion was instilled in me.
So, Brian, what motivated you to get involved and eventually run and own an international diving agency like ITI?
Well, I didn't necessarily, I didn't start it. Okay. On that, I ended up, so through my years of working at the University of Rhode Island, I met these influential people in the industry. And one of those people was the gentleman by the name of Brett Gillum. Brett is the founder of TDI, Technical Diving International, one of the founders of TDI. And he and I had met, and he asked me, he contacted me when I was in my 20s, still teaching at the University of Rhode Island, and offered me a job to come work for him as his assistant. And I jumped at it. And because I knew there was a possibility that could go places. And I was working there about 2 years, and he turned to me and he said, I brought you on just as my assistant and in hopes that we could find a group of people to take it over down the road. But you've got an opportunity to have this whole thing. At the time, it was my girlfriend, but now it's my wife, Stephanie. We both worked for him. And he said, you two are running the show right now. Let me mentor you for a little while. So the company changed hands officially in 2004. He retired. And since then, the company has grown exponentially. It's just gone like mad. So,
Brian, that is amazing. Your organization has certainly grown to an amazing status in the diving community. From those humble beginnings to what many would consider the #1 training organization in the world. You must be so proud of the job you've done getting to where you're at now.
Be careful what you wish for. From the organization starting, it's been a humble, we're humble in where the size we're growing to. But we're always trying to hold on to our roots and keep that going. There's just a couple of things that we focus on in a major way here at our company. A lot of people talk about service. But I remember from day one of working at TDI that we were instructed that, one, we're going to pick up the phones when somebody calls through. Two, we're going to continue to make products that people can professionals can use, that make sense and that are educationally sound. They're not written to a scientific level where nobody can understand them. So easy to understand, comprehending materials. And then 3, we're going to process the certifications. And we're going to do all that in a timely manner in a 24 hours period. So from the time of, in the 90s to now, we still have a turn time of certification processing of less than 24 hours. It's been the same way. And the reason behind it is somebody wants that recognition right away, one, and they want to be able to, the professionals always have people standing in front of them saying, hey, I'm trying to get this. Can I get that? Our job is to earn the business of the customer, the diver, and also the dive professionals at every day. So if we put ourselves at the bottom of the list rather than the top of the list, it makes it a lot easier. Our job is to help everybody above.
Brian, I love your expression that you are at the bottom of the organization, not the top, and have taken ego out of the equation. I know that at times that I've needed to call in, and my questions were always answered quickly and accurately. I can imagine this has set you apart from the rest as well. You and I both know that divers and instructors aren't always the most patient individuals, so taking the time to answer questions like this in such a quick response has got to make a huge difference.
We actually track each week, and in the company with the headquarters staff. You have a lot of, I say there's like 50 people that are involved on a day-to-day level at HQ level. We have a ranking of number of phone calls you take and a ranking of number of chats. Now we have an instant chat feature and how we're responding and check it. And it's a weekly report that we look at and say, how are we doing? What questions came in? What are the things that we have to, how can we make it more efficient of what we've done on? And that's been extremely successful. It turns into a competition on who can snag a phone or who can get a chat faster here, just as a friendly thing. And everybody in the company has the ability to chime in and do any one of those parts. So it's not just, if I'm here and the phone's ringing, I'll pick up the phone. It's just, nobody's above doing any job is what it comes down to. So it's a lot of fun.
That has to be quite surprising for dive shops, instructors, or customers to dial up the phone and suddenly find themselves on the line with you.
There's two Brians here now. Brian Shreve is actually basically our manager, our head of training and membership services. So the day-to-day operations, he kind of runs that whole thing. So most of the time when I pick up, he says, "Hey, this is Brian." They think it's him. It's pretty funny. So I'll have an opportunity to talk to somebody for a while. How can I help you out? And everything. And then eventually in the conversation, I'm like, yeah, I can get that done. Harry, help you out. And then he help him out, come back a couple hours later and go, "Wait a second, that wasn't you, that was Brian?" Yeah, he does it all the time. So it's fun when that happens. I really appreciate and enjoy talking to people outside of the stuff that I deal with on the day-to-day basis. It's just it's a passion to be able to communicate and interact with people.
I can't imagine any other organization out there where I could call up and randomly have my call answered by the president of the company. Now, Brian, let me ask you this. If you could go back in time and start dive training all over again, what would you do differently knowing what you know now?
On a personal level, I would learn how to use a camera much better. So I am not the most prolific underwater photographer or videographer at all. And I have found later on that I want to pick it up. I want to get that time and dedicate into it. So I wish I had that. I wish I had done that a little bit more. On the professional side, from the diving agency, what would I do differently? Probably, I don't know if I don't know if I would do much differently. There are some safety protocols I wish that we would have thought about more so. But you typically learn from lack of experience. A lot of standard changes and stuff like that come out from an incident or something like that. It's unfortunate, but you wish you could have a little bit more foresight to potentially prevent it. That's the toughest thing about our job. The job is, our phone rings and there's been an incident, there's an accident, and it doesn't matter whether it's with our training organization or any other training organization. You just hate it when this happens in our industry. And one of the things that people may not realize is the communication and the respect and the understanding of at the executive levels of running these organizations. We all talk to one another. We all empathize and we all support one another. So, we might say, we're number two, we're number one. There's a little bit of competition, but at the end of the day, nobody wants to see anything happen to anybody in the diving community. So we work together on a number of those things to try to prevent that. But I guess the big thing would be if you could have had a little bit more foresight along the way. So,
Hindsight's certainly 2020, and I definitely understand that. Yeah. Now, you mentioned a little bit, there's a few standards that you wish you jumped on a little faster or implemented a little quicker. What would those be? I'm just curious.
We put some training standards in place to essentially one of the standards that we look at quite a bit is when a dive professional, like an instructor gets in the water and they are not watching. An instructor has to be the type of person that does not need to they don't need to think about their gear. They just need to react if something happens to their facility, their equipment. When we initially got into CCR training, I mean, way back in the 90s and stuff like that, there was dive professionals that would wear CCR equipment while they were teaching somebody on open circuit, or while they were and different mixed units and stuff like that. And they may not have been an instructor on that level. They were just a diver on that CCR while teaching an open water class. And we saw some incidents where the instructors weren't paying attention to the gear they were diving, and they had a problem. So I wish we would have said, you got to be a professional before you could use that equipment. Before you could, you can't. And to give you a perfect example, you can't dive on a CCR, any unit, unless you're an instructor on that unit while diving and teaching other people. Does that make sense? That would be an example of one.
No.
I wish we could have standardized. I still think I wish we could have standardized some of that training, like on the technical side a little bit more. Between the organizations, there were efforts to do it. It seems to have leveled out a lot now, but there were things where we had dissimilar standards, which we could have done a better job working together as an industry. So,
no, fair enough. That's definitely one of the challenges and frustrations that a lot of us out there who dive tech or do the bigger dives, that you have GUI out there with one standard, you've got TDI without different standard, then you got SDI coming in and trying to bring their own mix to it, and then DRI. So you've got a lot of different opinions out there, and honestly, for the most part, none of them are wrong. There's certainly ones that each of us as an individual tech diver disagree with, or we prefer one agency over the other. But I agree, having a deeper standardization across the organization has been nice to see grow. It's still, I feel like it still has a long way to go, but it's certainly from just 2-3 years ago, just in that short amount of time, I've seen a lot more of the agencies coming together and making a knit. So good job on that. That's amazing. And it's wonderful to hear that you don't sit in your own bubble as TDI, SDI, ITI, and say, this is the standards, this is what our divers are doing, this is what we see, but rather we see the community as a whole, and how do we come together to make a better community that's safer. So that's awesome.
Yep.
Brian, what have been your most memorable experiences in scuba diving, and how have they influenced your work with ITI?
There's lots and lots of memorable experiences. I've had above water, below water, interacting, meeting people. It's been a privilege to just literally bump in and have a conversation with people that you never thought you could. So some of those are there. Recently, the most memorable experiences I have had is watching and working with my son, by far. I've been there, done that, done all those dives, and you've been in the water all over the world and stuff like that. But his first open water dive in Bon Air in 10 feet of water was by far one of the best dives I've ever had in my life. He still talks to it about to this day. I nowadays, he's my free diving buddy. We're literally, we go off and jump in the water wherever. We grab our fins and mass snorkel fins, and we go. It's a ton of fun. Like I said, earlier as we were talking, having the ability to free dive is it, and he is taken to he loves that from it. So that on that side, I'd have those experiences. The lots of experiences training scientific divers. Had lots of experiences doing a lot of North Atlantic wreck diving. That's where I really learned how to technical dive in my way in the beginning. On it, diving the U-853, which is a German U-boat off of Block Island in Rhode Island. I got hundreds of dives on that boat, and one of the best marine interactions I've ever had in my life was on that boat doing, your standard North Atlantic wreck dive. You're out there, you're bouncing around on waves. You're inside a muddy wreck. Visibility isn't very good. It's cold. It's your standard wreck dive. And there we are hanging on a line. And what swims by us? Two pilot whales. It was just right between us and another group hanging on another line. It just looked like this black object moving through the water at first, which it was. And all we could think about was we got a big shark in the water, which is not unheard of in that area. But two pilot whales decided to literally swim between the two boats that were hanging. And I was underwater at the time. So it just, those types of things is what gets you coming back over and over and over again.
What have been your most memorable experiences in scuba diving, and how have they influenced your work with ITI?
The working for the National Underwater Data Collecting Center and going through the incidents and stuff like that, that influenced me heavily on how I look at accidents, and I look at things and the way standards are impacted, and how you can put standards together to prevent those incidences in the future. So you learn from what went on in one place and make a standard change in another place to prevent that. That John McAniff, who was the guy that I worked with, he would often say to me, "Look at this report, tell me what you think happened." And I would go off and look at it, and then he would ask me questions about, well, what about this? What do you think about this? And what do you think about that? And did you think about this scenario? And it opened up my mind that there's a lot more answers. There's a lot more opportunities for better answers than what you initially get. So why did it happen? So I am always looking for the why behind everything and really digging for those answers. And that influenced me in a big way. Yeah, that definitely one of those major influences for me.
Well, that's great. Asking the why, and I think that's interesting as you go through. I know the deeper I get as a technical instructor, I find myself reading those accident reports and asking myself, what would I do if I was in that situation? How would I handle that? What would I do? And what information would I want to take from that accident report and impart to students that I'm teaching from open water up through technical diving? So it's got to be even more so as the owner of an agency as awesome as yours. So I agree with that. How do you think ITI has really evolved since its inception?
I'd like to think we've done a lot of positive things, and along the way, the company itself, one of the first organizations for nitrox, first organization for semi-closed circuit, really launched Atlantis Rebreather way back in the early days. The first recreational, true manufacturer. Lots of people could get access to it. SCR was innovative. We brought ELearning to the industry back in 2000. Only wish that we had the foresight at that time to realize how big ELearning was going to become, because we literally started it before a lot of people, like many industries, had ever even thought about it. So that could have been a different opportunity to go a different direction from an educational standpoint. And bringing more tools to people that they could learn from. So from the innovative side and stuff like that, bringing ELearning to the industry, which is one of the things that really separated SDI and brought us to the forefront from an organization and launched us from just being a smaller organization forward. So those are just a couple of things that I can think of off the top of my head.
So that's fantastic. One of the things I appreciate about your e-learning, by the way, is that as you go through the e-learning, the instructor has access to the questions that the student missed, so they know what to go over more thoroughly and what to skip, but what the student has a better understanding of already. So that's definitely something on the forefront that I don't see that in other organizations. That had to have been kind of an aha and amazing moment for you to say, hey, let's track this. How did that come about?
So we knew that we wanted the professionals to be able to focus on what students struggled with, and you would go through class and teach by teacher the chalkboard or teacher the dry erase board or whatever like that. You never knew what your students really grasped or not. So one of the things, my mother was a teacher as well, and she was always, and my family was all teachers and educators. So he's always trying to read the room and figure out what students are getting. And testing was one way that people do it. They figure out what their knowledge level is or what their not their knowledge was is. But we found out later on that and then we've learned over the years that some people test well and some people don't test well, and that can't be the only metric you use. So when we came to the learning port, we said, you know what? Let's make them go through the program and give all this data on what they got wrong to the professional, so the professional could take their class, and rather than spending the 5 minutes on fit and feel of a mask, okay, and all those different things, which in a standard SCUBA class before we had e-learning in place, they would spend 5 minutes talking. Like they could spend that extra 5 minutes or 10 minutes on decompression theory, okay, and make them really understand that, or get further into depth and spend more time on Boyle's law. Okay, why why we don't want anybody to hold their breath. They focus on the things that are more important than the little tasks that you can get checked off with a box. So the funny thing is we came up with if you get through we put in place a system where at the end of every chapter, you got to get 100% before you go back. You can go on to the next. It's 3 to 5 questions. Well, anybody who's been through our e-learning program knows that once they get through the first and they miss a question, they get bounced back to the beginning of that chapter. Everybody, and we can see that because it's all time date stamped, races right to the questions again. Because they figure, if I didn't choose A, I'm going to choose B this time. I'll get the answers right. And they can guess their way through the e-learning system. They can't, because all the questions rotate. It's all randomization of the questions throughout the whole system, according to what the chapter is. Well, then you sit there and they go, oh my gosh, these questions are different. So they really have to try to grasp and understand that data. So 2004, 2005, we're invited by the universities we work with to go to a maritime presentation on e-learning. And the U.S. Coast Guard is hosting this particular event with all the schools that are holding, that train. The Maine Maritime University was the one who invited us to go along as their guest. And there was every school that's training the maritimers and the people driving boats all over the world in the United States at this particular conference. And it was specifically to focus on how e-learning could come into this industry. And we had a chance to sit down with the people responsible for educating the Coast Guard licensing, to get your Coast Guard licensing online. And they asked us, how did we do it? Because they have very strict requirements for taking your Coast Guard examination. At that time, way back then, you had to go to a specific building in a specific place and on a specific time and take a very proctored exam. We showed them how we built tracking stuff within e-learning. And at the end of the conference, they literally took our pamphlet on how we described it and put it up on the wall for all these universities and said, this is what you have to do. So the maritime industry adopted something that we had put in place. It's pretty cool at that time.
Wow, that's some definitely deep foresight. And the funny thing with the greatest discoveries like that, I've discovered that you don't think about it until you see it, and then you think, gosh, that's so stinking simple. Why did I think of that? And so something like that, while it seems so simple, it was definitely revolutionary. It changed your thought process. So good job on that. That's amazing.
Thank you.
So Brian, what challenges have you faced as the owner of International Scuba Diving Training and Agency, and how have you overcome these?
One of the challenges I've faced is getting enough time to go diving on my own. Okay. The amount of diving I did pre this job and the amount of diving I do now, people think, oh, you work in the diving, you get out all the time. Truth be told, I spend a lot of time behind a screen and managing bigger overall projects. I've been able to quell that a lot by my son pushing me and him saying, let's go. So seeing the world through his eyes, seeing the underwater world and having those experiences him first time, it just reignited me to want to do things. I was talking to him last night, and he's asking me, he's 14 years old, and he's asking me, he knows more about wrecks that I've dove multiple times than I do. The TV show Drain the Oceans, he is like addicted to it. And he asked me the other day when could I take him diving on the Prince of Wales and Repulse in the South China Sea next year? I'm like, buddy, that we need a lot more training. We'll get there eventually. But that is one of the challenges getting out there. Another one of the challenges that I run into, I think it's something on the professional level. Sometimes it's working within standards development bodies and getting consensus for everybody to go forward to agree on a minimum standard or agree on a standard. That can be an extreme challenge when business interests impact a safety standard. So when I go into these standards bodies and stuff like that, and from it, and Sean Harrison, who's he and I have worked together for 20 years at international training, over 20 years. And both of us say we leave our personal, we could take our shirts off. We're not walking in there as an SDI, TDI representative. We're working in there as an industry professional that's going to look for a standard. And if that means that TDI or SDI needs to change a standard because collectively or a group of organizations think the standard needs to be high, we have to do it. So safety first when you walk into those rooms, and not all the people that work in those rooms make decisions based off that when business interests get in there. And that's aggravating from an integrity standpoint. But we continue to push and continue to move forward.
That's awesome. So that's got to be a challenge. I mean, you're starting to deal with a lot of different cultures, a lot of different beliefs, a lot of different people, a lot of different personalities. So how do you manage the international operations between cultural differences in countries and where they operate as well?
A lot of learning curve from it, but we have representatives in almost every country. And from professional standpoint, I mean, we have 26 offices around the world that help us understand the cultural nuances and what you can and can't do and can and can't say in that. So from that standpoint, it's just asking questions and listening to points of view. That's really the biggest skill set that we train anybody who comes into our business development team that does a lot of travel for us. Is you got to be a good listener to understand it and realize everybody does things a little bit differently. So from the standard side of things, not only do you have the dive professional organization, but you have countries involved that set their own standards. So being involved, with country representatives where it's law to do it a certain way, you have to be aware of that. The way it works here in the United States is not how it works in the rest of the world. It's, very much different. So it's just asking questions and listening.
That's awesome. So on kind of the same note, right now, you and I both know that the primary person in our industry of diving is male. They're a little older. What are you doing currently to push and empower women into diving?
Well, I happen to be lucky enough to be married to Stephanie, who was just last year inducted to the Women Divers Hall of Fame. I'm with every day. Stephanie, she came into technical diving in 1997, 98 in the TDI. And she rose through the ranks of the male-dominated industry to become an owner of the largest technical training agency in the world. And I got her as a role model. I mean, she just shows me things and helps me see it in a different way. And the things that she puts in place, she was inducted into the Women Divers Hall of Fame by a group of women. Nobody really knew what Stephanie did, but by a group of women that found out they knew what she was doing and how she was helping other groups of women come up. So as a result, with her at the head of an agency right along there with me, every decision we make is male, female, it's how do we make it work for both parties? So it's really simple. So
That's
to
awesome.
grow it, we she helps us with the ideas and empowering people.
That's awesome. I'm also married to a partner who's amazing and is a technical diver with me, and she's gone through all my courses with me as well. But you and I both know that we've been on that tech boat with our wife, and our wife was the only female on that boat, and just there's a certain amount of pride for us, I think, and for them as well to see my wife slugging it out with all the guys in a technical environment, slinging twins and a couple of deco bottles. There's a coolness to that. So that's cool. I
Yeah,
definitely appreciate that.
yeah, absolutely.
So, Brian, what do you think sets SDI, well, ITI, apart from other scuba diving agencies in terms of training programs, certifications, things like that?
One of the service side of things is what our real foundation is. The communicating, talking to people, our bottom up management style. It's not about being in an ivory tower on it and being above things. It's we got to work every day for the people that we support in this industry. That's one of the things I don't. You're a dive professional. I work for you. So, and it's just it's our approach to things. I think that's one of the things that changes a little bit different. The other thing is we're not afraid to be wrong. Um, you know, I, I I make mistakes every day. People in our company make mistakes every day. It's easy to say, "Yeah, I made a mistake. How do I do better?" So the ability to self-reflect, look each other, and make those changes and pivots along the way. We don't have I don't, we don't hold that technical diving ego on the rec boat. I grew up on all those rec boats, the north, the ones trained divers go into the Doria for years, and been through all that, and it didn't matter whether or not you had this regulator going in your mouth, that regulator going in your mouth. You had this gas, you went to that depth, you got this number at your computer. All it really mattered is if you had a good time and you came back safe. That's at the end of the day. It's supposed to be recreational and it's supposed to be enjoyable. So just not having an ego. So
That's awesome. So, how do you think SDI ensures the safety and preparedness of divers and who complete their training programs?
So, one of the things through our testing requirements, which you talked about with e-learning, we are really recording whether or not they understand something and giving the students the ability to correct that, and then the instructors to have the ability to focus in on what skill sets they really need to see and really need to focus on, so that they can become safe. We're constantly updating our materials with the latest technologies and latest information on it from an educationally sound standpoint. And we're constantly getting advice. We have teams of advisors on how to change and what we need to do to adapt and improvise those particular standards, manuals, programs, all the stuff that we have.
Right on. So, on that same note, I guess, how do you ensure that the instructors that are qualified and experienced and providing that high level of training that is demanded for divers around the world?
Well, we've got a 100% quality assurance program. So every time somebody is certified within the organization, they automatically get a digital survey to do. So every student globally around the world gets this information. And it asks some standard questions depending on the course that they took. And we get that information back. That allows us to keep track of what our professionals are, how they're doing and what jobs they're doing for it. We'll get a report in that says, I don't know, something is an inconsistency. We send that on to the professional, ask the professional, hey, what happened? So we do a 100% quality check and of that to maintain that. When we do find out outside of those surveys, things that are going on, we have a quality assurance department that investigates these accidents, comes right back to my investigative background, in addition to some other people's investigative background of going ahead and finding out what really went on and how to make it better. So keeping an eye on it. And then the final thing is no one in the company is above having an investigation. And I can say this to you right now because I've said this story multiple times. um, I don't know, it was pre-COVID. So it's probably 4 years ago. We had a staff member working in our training and membership services at the time, a junior person, and a registration form came across for a student who took a particular course, and they violated the instructor writes down the maximum depth they took them to, and they turned around and wrote down the maximum depth. I was the one who taught the course to one of the staff members, and it was one of my other staff members who caught it. He walked in to Stephanie's office and said, "What do I do with this?" And she said, "You do exactly what you do with every other investigation, and you go and you present it to the instructor and you say what happened." And he brought it down, and now he's advanced in this company very well. He brought it down to me and said, the maximum depth requirement, I think at the time, was 70 feet for the intro to tech class. And I brought a student to one of our staff members to 80 feet and wrote it down. I violated the standard. And he called me out on it. And I went, that is an example of this system working. I made a mistake. I just did. I thought it was 80. It was 70. Nobody got hurt. Okay. But when I got called out on it, you're right. I'm wrong. And that ability to validate everybody, no one is above the rules. That's one of the things that I think separates us in a big way.
That's awesome to not have anybody nobody's above the law, right?
Yeah.
That's awesome. So what measures does ITI take to promote environmental and sustainable dive practicing among its divers?
Well, we've been doing this for years. We've done things quietly, and actually we're talking about it a little bit more, but I'll be able to tell you, and you could get kind of a little bit of scoop here on something. But we've been supporting environmental organizations quietly behind the scenes for years, all sorts of nonprofits and things associated. For instance, we work with Florida Atlantic University right now and their scientific program. In addition to that, we were the back-end scientific for the AAUS, the American Academy of Underwater Science. We helped build their entire certification process for their scientific diver certification 10 years ago. And helped get their program standardized. Now, the AAUS is now running their own certification program on their own outside of our system, but we did that for 180 scientific institutions around the world for a long time. And that was just our back-end engine helping them get going and standardize so training scientific divers around the world for years. If you have an AAUS certification in the last 10 years, it went through the program we helped build them for. So that would be one example. Now, I mentioned passion in the ocean and where it all comes from. My passion definitely comes from my parents, and my mom triggered me to get off my butt last year, and everything that went on with everything that we went there. In June of this year, we will be launching our not-for-profit organization. We've been building it for the last 6 months for it. And the intention of this organization is to help raise funds through all of our lobbyists and contacts we have throughout all of our different institutions. We've put programs together for years on it. We have a ton of people connected around the world that want to help out and do what's right. So we are going to be launching the name of the organization is Clear Currents, and it's World Ocean Day is the day we're going to be doing, which is June 6th, I think. I'm doing that off the top of my head. So we're really excited about getting back to that and have and be able to get back to what my roots were, climbing around in the marsh and teaching people about critters in the ocean. And Stephanie and I are really, this has been a eye-opening moment for us this past year about where we wanted to get going. Everybody went through their, eye-opening thing with COVID. What do I want to be doing and why am I doing what I'm doing? This was it for us. So, and this is it for us. So I'm really excited about that particular thing. And the responses we've already received from the contacts we put out are absolutely go, 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 go. So we don't want to just be another organization that talks about it, that supports SDI. This is actually going to be run completely independent of international training. So with a group of really cool people to do it with.
That is fantastic. So launching on June 6th. So
Yeah.
let us know how we can help. We want to definitely be a part of whatever we can do to participate, to promote it, to help it, anything we can do. So keep us in the loop.
Tell
Absolutely.
people to stay on this interview till the end and get a scoop. Tease them.
Absolutely. I will make sure to put that in. That's fantastic. I love hearing cool things like that, especially sustainability has really definitely been something near and dear to our heart, but it's definitely a growing message that needs to be put out there. And we need to think about that in our communities. How do we, we talk about simple things like, certainly stop using single-use containers and straws, but there's a bigger environment out there that we all need to be a part of as divers and make sure that we're protecting the world for our kids. I have kids, you have kids, and I have grandkids that'll soon be diving as well. So I get it.
Yeah. Yeah. We have it right here in our backyard with regards to there was a major environmental issue about 5 years ago here in the St. Lucie, all the water coming out of Okeechobee. A lot of people don't know is from Orlando south, all the water ends up in Okeechobee, a big lake right in the middle of the state, the middle of Florida. From there, the water goes left and right. It goes out into the oceans through canals. One of those canal systems, the Port St. Lucie waterway, comes out literally right down the road from us. And the toxic algae blooms and everything. We literally had video of manatees drinking fresh water from hoses off docks because they couldn't get access to it, any of the fresh water. That environmental disaster that occurred really was around the community. But what ended up happening is we got involved and met some very influential people in the uh, in Congress. I can tell you right now, our local congressman was looking for resources, and he walked in our office and said, "What do you guys know about this?" And we said, "We know a lot about this, and we know a lot about the impact it's having on the oceans right now. What do you need from us from information?" And he said, "Get me the details you can get." So that relationship started from there. We went ahead and months ago there was a catch and kill shark tournament. In Florida, where they trophy fish for sharks. And we caught wind of it. One of my staff said, "Hey, there's this petition going around to shut this thing down. Can we do anything about it?" I said, "Heck yeah, we can. Put it on our social channel. Put it in our social channel. Let's make these people famous." It went around the world. They were getting contact from Thailand, hate mail on their pages and everything like that about, "You better not do this." The whole thing got shut down. So we were able to get the people who care about the ocean, and that's one of the things we found out with international training is the voice that it has and the influence it has, that we can do things and we can collectively do it in a positive way to influence the direction of where we're going through things. So, and I'm happy to say that our local congressman is an environmentalist at heart, which is awesome. Makes our life easy. So
That's fantastic. And the fact you were able to get that shut down, I remember that going through and I saw the messages going through you guys and out to them, and we all followed it out. And so it was impressive. I saw it start and was curious how far it would go, and I was very happy. And it seems like all the latest ones of those shark fishing festivals have kind of gone underground. I've seen bits and pieces here and there where they said, "Don't publicize or share this to anybody."
yeah, yeah. Let's make them famous. Let's power social media if they're going to do something.
Exactly. And that is absolutely amazing. So, what challenges and obstacles has ITI faced in operating as an international scuba diving agency and training agency, and how have you personally addressed those?
Whew. Obstacles. Trying to think. In the very beginning, when the company changed hands back in the early 2000s, there was a lot of lack of communication between the heads of organizations, and they talked. The generation that grew their training organizations grew up with a mantra of one of their business models was "I do it better than you," that kind of thing. So they sold against each other in that manner. And their approach, that approach of competition that way, we're better than you, we're better than you, we're better than you, that kind of thing. And they're no good at this particular thing. Didn't work for us. So as a result of that, when we changed hands, Sean and I just literally started picking up the phones and calling the heads of the other organizations. We want to work with you. What do you want to know? I'll give you anything you want. Here's my cell phone number. Let's talk. Let's get together. Let's have a coffee. Let's talk at DEMA. I'm going to be in your area. Come visit us. We'll come visit you. And that building of relationships between other organizations helped us. It was one of the challenges of the old guard changing to the new guard. And the new guard cooperates a lot more because we all have very similar issues, and we work together more. So that's pretty cool. I can tell you I've got more heads of training agencies in my cell phone than I do family members. So
Fair enough.
yeah.
So, can you share any plans and the future initiatives that you have with ITI and how the pipeline to further enhance training and services that you got coming up?
Well, I gave you a scoop on the clear currents. So
Yeah.
that's one of them. We just actually, I just left the meeting a little while ago. Last Friday, we launched a completely revamped CCR program. So ELearning, student manual, PowerPoint, instructor guide, instructional videos, whole suite of products. It's all coming out this week in RF4, the Rebreather Forum 4, which is taking place in Malta. We did it there. So that's one of the new things coming through on it. It's been a couple of years before since we've done that. So that's one of the big ones coming through. Another one of them that we're working on right now is we are doing a complete revamp of all of our water diver videos and all our basic training videos. And that's going to occur this May. So we're going to have a lot of editing through the summer. But it's time to freshen all that stuff up, get more equipment, more up-to-date equipment, and start implementing a lot of the zero buoyancy type of training, not the zero buoyancy, but proper buoyancy type skill stuff that we've been talking about. We're trying to pull some more of that out of our actual training videos and put in more being able to do skills in a neutral environment.
That's fantastic. I don't think you can update that kind of stuff enough, to be honest with you. There's always changes. And they can definitely get stale over a course of a very short time as well, especially for instructors who get to watch that same safety video 18 times in 2 months.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
When I can quote it verbatim from beginning to end, I've probably watched it too many times.
Yeah. Well, there's a running joke. A lot of us were used as models in the past, different products and stuff like that. And one of our heads in product development says, "I'm trying to get rid of the Brian with hair, the fat Brian with hair pictures." So there was pictures of me, a rescue manual with hair, but I had a lot more weight on at that time. And now they're looking for skinny, bald Brian pictures if they find any. So we're trying to update them and keep up this space. I don't get used as a model anymore at all, which is great. It's perfect. There's plenty of other people that can do it. Just updating and making everything look a little bit better.
That's fantastic. I'll look forward to seeing those as well. So you've got a little secret that I kind of think is pretty exciting. Can you share a little bit about the collaboration between ITI and Avatar and how that came to be and what your role in that was?
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's about seven years old. So, man, that goes way back. The head diving officer is a TDI IT, John Garvin. John Garvin taught me how to use an inspiration rebreather back in 2000. John and I went through some stuff back in 2000 after that and created a good, very tight relationship. We worked together for quite some time. John was, when he taught me, he was running a dive school out of Turks and Caicos. But he had came up to Canada, St. Lawrence Seaway, to do the training of it. And we just bonded and we clicked. He went from there to Australia, doing some things. Then he went to another spot. And then the next thing you know, he contacts me and he goes, you know who I'm working with? No, who are you working with? I'm working with James Cameron. And he worked his way up with James Cameron and got heavily involved with it. And to this day, John will just literally send me a text message and say, I'm working on a project. I need some e-learning codes. Okay, what is it for? Can't tell you. All right, here's some e-learning codes. And that's how Avatar 2 came about. He contacted me and said, I'm working on a project. And I was on my back deck of my house. I think it was cleaning the pool. And he said, I'm working on a project. And I went ahead and got him the e-learning codes. I said, I have no idea what he's working on at this point. And he contacted me 2 days later with an NDA and came in and said, sign it. I signed it, called me up. He said, I need you to get on a plane and come out to California. You're going to go see the set. You're Avatar 2. I went, holy cow. What does that mean? He goes, you're just going to provide the training on it. And we did all of the SCUBA training associated with it. That led to a lunch with myself and a gentleman by the name of Kirk Crack with PFI on that set. And Kirk and I decided to create a partnership where PFI came in, Performance Freediving International came into the ITI family. So John and I have known each other a long time, and I pull out a little trinket right on my desk here. And this is a battery that was at the bottom of the Marianas Trench with James Cameron when he went there many years ago to do that dive in the tube. John was one of the instrumental people that made it happen. And there's a bunch of people in the industry that came through. So John sent me the batteries, hey, this has been at the bottom of the ocean, which is pretty cool. That's how we got involved in it. Just the service end of it and building relationships. So
that had been pretty exciting to go through that process and be a part of the movie. How involved were you with going out and to the set, to the actors, to the actual everything that was going on as well? Did you have a chance to get out to that?
I went out to the set at one time and got to walk around and go see it and see all the different things that they were doing and seeing all the testing and stuff they were doing with dive equipment and stuff like that. And that was my only interaction out there on that particular time. All of the time, they're just supporting John and supporting Kirk with whatever they needed during the day. They were on the set the entire time. So and then just helping with the training, basically the educational side of stuff. If they needed some extra, they needed extra gear, extra equipment, we made contacts and made things happen. So it's pretty unique that we were hearing stories about the actors and actresses doing dive vacations with family and stuff like that. And there's tons of photos and imagery that we're not allowed to use yet, but I know that it will come out eventually of them all having a wonderful time underwater. And it was so awesome to be involved in a movie that talked about the underwater world as this beautiful place. So just what James Cameron is doing with the Avatar thing and water and showing the people in the world, the rest of the world, that the ocean is not full of sharks eating people. Okay. And it's this most beautiful place that you and I both know. It's amazing. It is another world where you get to see things you're never going to see any other place. And it's the reason why we have to work so hard to protect it. So just an honor to be involved with it.
That is absolutely amazing. I can't even imagine how cool that must have been for you. So,
yeah.
Well, what motivates you to continually improve and enhance your training programs that you're offered at ITI?
just that we can do it better. One of the things that we always look at is, it doesn't matter somebody if somebody drops the weight on their foot, okay, in a dive class, is there a way we can improve things so that we can prevent that weight from being dropped on their foot again? I mean, that's very simple and basic, but it's the motivation that you're always learning, and you can always look at do things better. That's really what motivates us. So,
Right on. What accomplishment or milestones are you the most proud of as the owner of ITI?
to this day, uh, I still really, really enjoy taking somebody underwater that has never breathed underwater before on scuba for the very first 4 or 5 breaths and watching their reaction. That ability to bring somebody and teach them and train them and be involved in the educational and take them and put them in a foreign environment, that's really, really cool to me. And the fact that our organization is able to do this on a global level all over the place and impact thousands of people. My sister's a teacher. My mother's a teacher. Before then, everybody else was teachers. Just being able to share those experiences and let people see things in a different way and enjoy it. Just watching people learn. That's probably the coolest thing. It's really just the coolest thing. My son is going on a snorkeling trip with his school. The entire 7th grade is going on a snorkeling trip. And we were able to be involved with helping them get everybody ready. And here I am with, 80 middle school kids, watching them learn how to hold their breath a little bit more, learn how to do a proper free dive, and them getting all giddy. That type of stuff is just, that's what this industry, that's the gold in this industry. So
That's absolutely amazing. I think that's the reason most of us do it.
yeah.
It's either that or we're so into diving that this is the only way we can afford it.
Yeah. There's definitely that. It definitely becomes an expensive habit.
Yep, we teach so we can dive more. And that's our, at least that's what we try and tell people, because we all know the difference between a pizza and a scuba instructor, right?
Yeah.
Pizza family of 4.
Well, I took it to an extreme. I got involved in ownership of a dive training agency. You want to talk about really becoming a problem? So if anybody gives you a hard time about owning too much dive gear, say, "Hey, at least I'm not him."
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So let's go back to the beginning for a moment. Brian, who certified you to become dive certified?
Guy by the name of Bob Peck, Robert Peck. He taught me open water diver when I was 13 years old at Cape Cod Aquarium. So still in contact with him. Bob is one of the guys who contacts me and says, "I know you when you couldn't tell the difference between a chicken bone and a whale bone." Okay. That's one of the running jokes he's got with me. I'm like, yeah, it was an idiotic mistake I made when I was 13 years old. But he was my original instructor. He a great mentor. So
Awesome. So how has basic dive certification changed since you got certified to what you do today?
now you're dating me. I mean, well, the use of dive computers. I mean, absolutely. Dive computers are essential portion equipment. We were still using the tables at that time. The Edge may have come out. No, the Edge had been out, but it was the Monitor 2 by US Divers, which was a computer that wasn't really mainstream at that time. So dive computers, the buoyancy compensators, weight integrated BCDs, and that in situation. I learned how to dive with a J valve. I don't know, those people who know, we've been in the industry a long time. A J valve, for those who weren't, it was a little bar you flipped up and down when you got tough to breathe, and you hope it worked because you're supposed to give you a little bit more air. Because pressure gauges were optional. Now, I still had a pressure gauge when I first learned. I'm not that far, but so yeah, those are two of the major changes. Technical diving, I learned to dive in 1985. So everything, the whole technical diving revolution I grew up with in the very beginning. So everything associated with that has changed quite so bit. The advancements in closed circuit rebreathers in the last 10 years are unbelievable what they're doing and the stuff and the things they're learning along the way. So it's all, I probably go on and on about that.
So for you, tell us about your favorite kind of diving. What kind of diving do you like the most?
So, man, there's so many different types. I would say I really enjoy being in the water with big animals, like big animals, where it makes you feel small. Um, having having at the aquarium where I initially started to work with, I was part of a pilot whale project and had a pilot whale that we rehabilitated, and it wasn't able to be released because it had a deformity from its accident. So we rehabilitated it and got to be involved with him on a day-to-day basis. That anything like that, sharks, whales, Goliath grouper. Not many people know about this, but some of the best big animal diving in the world is off of Jupiter, Florida. That I've done anywhere in the world. I mean, the turtles, the sharks, it's every dive. The Goliath grouper migration is incredible. So love big animal diving. Um, from that passion, I could be in 30 feet of water in blue water and have an absolute blast. Blue water diving is amazing, to do because you never know what you're going to see, especially if you can go way offshore on that. So that's pretty cool. I grew up with my head in wrecks in the North Atlantic. I got a history. I got a history side of it. I love that anthropology side of the wreck diving and stuff. And then I guess I would say just free diving, the ability to shed it all and get close to marine animals and just be just like them, go up and down. So, I mean, those are all different phases and everything. I know really didn't pick out one, um, but any one of those. So,
Awesome. So what's your favorite dive site? If you could pick one dive site right now to go back to and dive again, and you could dive again and again and again, what would that be? Where would it be?
but you realize if I pick one out of all the ones of everybody else in the world, because they're going to be advised to go all over the world, they're going to say, "Why didn't you pick mine?" Like so, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick the one that I've been to. Okay, I haven't been to any of those. That not to discredit those, but one of the best places I ever dove in my life was Cocos, off of Costa Rica. I had two blue water dives there that, I mean, there's a photo up here behind the wall, up here in my office right here, which is a picture of a diver going into a school of jacks. We were in like 3,000 feet of water, and we had a spawning of jacks literally happen right underneath us and totally envelop us. Thousands of jacks. It was incredible. We were right place, right time. Yeah, that was an incredible dive there. So I'd say that because there's tons of big animals, and that's a place where I had some of the best experiences.
That's awesome. No, I can get it completely. And the next question is a little unfair, but we're all curious. I mean, you are the guy, the president of ITI, and you've got literally the pick of every a florist out there. What do you dive personally? What gear are you diving?
I dive a little bit of everything. So if I had to jump in the water or whatever, I'd grab a snorkel mask and just go. Okay. And as far as I like a blacked out mask, a blacked out skin because it keeps the sunlight out. I like a real streamlined snorkel. From that, I've had a couple pairs of blade fins. I actually just snapped my old blade fins. So getting out of the water or getting in the water. And then, but from a dive equipment and stuff like that, from scuba equipment, I've dove literally. Right now, I have a let's see, I dive a little bit of everything. The truth be told, I found years ago that just trying the ability to do a little bit of everything is it. So dove a whole bunch of rebreathers. Um, yeah. So what's available at the time. So
Fair enough. I can get that.
yeah,
So for you, twin set or back or side mount?
depends on the situation. I'm really comfortable with twins on my back. I've done a lot of dives with twins on my back. And the reason why I've done a lot of dives is because I needed the room to put the cylinders under the side, so and carry all of that. But I on a cave dive, absolutely side mount. Now, I've done some wreck diving side mount, or just open water diving side mount. So I don't do it often, but I have the type of gear, I've had equipment where I can do back side mount, single tank, double tanks, or whatever at any given time. So it's really what floats my boat at that particular situation. I will tell you, if my back's hurting, I like side mount a lot more. So absolutely, getting old stuff.
Getting old things. That's what my grandfather used to say. He says, "Son, don't ever get old. It sucks."
Yeah.
I'm trying to avoid that, but it's not working so well. All right, Brian, SCR or CCR?
CCR nowadays. Yeah, absolutely. I grew up, I learned on SCR, but CCR nowadays.
Right on.
So,
what CCR are you currently using?
Oh, they just they just did a try session with a Choptima, which is the new dive right, the chest mount dive right one. That's the latest one I've looked at or I've played with. So I was supposed to do something with Liberty this week. It's not working out because I'm not gonna be at that particular conference. So those are two that I've looked at recently. But I've played with just about all of them. So yeah, some of the ones that I started on an Atlantis rebreather with a yellow bag for a flow meter. Those people who've been in the diving industry long enough know that before we actually had a flow meter on the Atlantis rebreathers, which was a little flow meter. You had a bag that you had to attach and pour water in top, and then you set your stopwatch. And based on when the water bubbled out of the top, that was your flow rate. Okay, so I started in that and survived. Okay. So going on now with the advancements, it's nice to see that you don't have to worry about a yellow bag anymore.
Fair enough. Well, Brian, thank you so much. I've got a few more questions. These are from actual people that we know and subscribers. And some of these are instructors. Some of them are just divers that are curious. So there's a couple different levels here. Brett Stewart, he's a instructor slash dive shop owner. Says, how do you organize? How does your organization find and develop the best instructors?
We get great instructor trainers. We have a pretty intensive instructor trainer program. It's almost 8 days long, where we teach them the two major things that we teach them is one, an understanding on the standards and why they're written the way they are. And the other thing is how to be a good evaluator. One of the key components of being a good evaluator is not being afraid of being evaluated yourself. So you're always constantly learning. It's one of the things we try to instill in our instructors across the world. So rather than thinking of yourself as an instructor, we want them to think of themselves as an educator. An educator is somebody who's willing to learn all the time. And when you go through the IT program, you find you're getting evaluated more than you've been evaluated the past couple of years for your training. And that allows you to stay fresh. That allows you to stay professional at what you're doing. So we have a thing in the company at any time, anybody can be evaluated for the presentations they're doing or how they're communicating with people. And I'll probably get an evaluation form from one of my staff who watched this whole particular interview, and they will say, yes, you got this score on this particular presentation. So
Fair enough. There's nothing wrong with that. I know what I
yeah,
teach. I teach dive masters, and I'm constantly I do a mentorship more than I do anything else. But I tell them, I said, look, yeah, I'm teaching you guys to use the standards, but I'm not above. As we go through, and you have your evaluation forms, I need you to hold me to my feet to the fire as well. If I miss a standard, I misspeak about something. If I do something wrong or I didn't do it in the correct order, I need you to call me on it after the class and do this. So that's awesome. That's the way it should be. Nobody should be above the law.
yeah. So the other thing is international training. Anybody should be able to do any skill when asked at any time. So during our IT program, everybody does dive master skills. Everybody's got to do an 800-meter swim. Everybody's got to do a 400-meter swim. And the staff who teaching the IT program are right in the water with them, doing it along with it. When's the last time an instructor actually had to do the 400 and 800-meter swim time was their dive master class or their open water instructor class? So if you've been teaching for 10 years or so, you haven't had to do it. Well, guess what? Jump in the water. If I ask you to do something, I'm willing to do it myself. And I can do it myself.
That's amazing. I do the swim qual on a regular basis because I've been moving up the ranks and working towards finishing up an IT instructor trainer. But I've held the swim quals, but I've never sat down and done it with myself. And I love that through these interviews like this, that I'm going to change that standard. Every time I do a swim qual, I'm going to sit down and do it with my dive guides, dive masters, assistant instructors, and help and show, hey, if you got to do it, so do I. That's fantastic.
Leading by example.
Leading from in front. I love it. I love it. So there's always that question. And I think a lot of us as instructors wonder, what happens? What's the process of washing an instructor out and saying, look, I get that you love diving, but you are not meant to be an instructor. That's got to be a really, really hard thing for you guys as an organization to do, but it has to be done sometimes. How do you handle that? And what's that process? What does it look like overall?
Well, there's we'll try to lead them down on why are they doing it. You ask somebody why you want to become a certain level in a dive professional. If you want to do it, typically we can help somebody see that, yes, you might be the greatest technical cave diver in the world. Okay. You might be extremely qualified in what you do and how you do it, but you're really not good at teaching somebody else to do it. So why do you really want that instructor card? What's their why behind it? And most of the time, and people like those that are extremely qualified and very good at diving on it, they realize, I really don't need this. I don't need this. I don't want that. But somebody who's willing to learn and put time and effort into something and retry and retry and retry, those are actually the kind of people that make the best professionals in the end, because they get the whole learning process. That's what we're really looking for at the end of the day. Somebody who flies through an instructor course and does well and is a good teacher, yes, absolutely. But the ones that struggle a little bit more actually get it and become better educators. So, because they listen more.
Fantastic. So how does that process look when we do have to separate somebody from the fold? They've come on an instructor, they looked good, they made it through the evaluation, but at a certain point, 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road, whatever that might be, that it's time to say, you know what? You're not cutting the mustard, bud. Sorry. What does that look like? How does that come about?
We have a quality assurance program that goes through. We do like an investigation into the things, come up with details, and then approach the instructor about remediation initially, and how you do that, put them under a different status, potentially probationary, to see if they're going to improve upon their things, if it's something that can be improved upon. And if that doesn't work, typically we move on to non-renewal of membership and tell them they're not, they should find something else to do.
That's got to be tough. I can't imagine. Because it's almost like telling somebody their baby's ugly. If they, it's just got to be a very tough conversation. So I appreciate when you guys do that, and because there's some times where it needs to happen, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yep.
So Adam K, he writes us and says, If you were to start your training all over again, what path of training would you take? Not talking about the organization specifically, but what do you deem the most important basic, intermediate, and advanced skills?
Strong snorkeling skills. Strong snorkeling skills. I wish they had a free diving program when I first started. I did free dive for years and didn't even know what it was. Someone who can do a snorkel mask, basically can take their mask and snorkel and their fins on the surface and do a snorkeling ditch and don. And it's not done that often anymore. Dive down the bottom of an 8-foot pool, take off their fins and take off their mask and snorkel, swim up to the surface, take 2-3 breaths of air, dive back down, put it all back on, clear it, and calmly swim to the surface. That is someone who's comfortable in the water. Those things of, I don't have to worry about that. I have the air on my back. Okay. I have plenty of time. Well, time runs out when you're panicked and you have a problem. So I believe that strong snorkeling skills are critical in the beginning. Okay. Intermediate skills. One of the things that I think intermediate and advanced skills that there needs to be more of a focus on, kind of changing the question on, that needs to be continued focus on it, is math. The math behind what goes into the dive computers, the math that goes behind into understanding how the dive tables work. Because nowadays we're slapping those things on our computer, on our wrist, we're turning around and programming it, and we're jumping in the water, and we're trusting everything that's coming up on that data set. Okay. Pilots still learn how to fly a plane outside of having all their instruments in front of them. There's a reason for that. Okay. It's not a complete all or fail safe. So, yes, technology is getting better. Yes, technology is more advanced, but you've got to have that ability to manually fix things and understand what's going on so you can recognize it before it happens, or recognize and find a solution to get out of it.
That's excellent. What about, let's just move on to that's the intermediate. How about advanced skills? What advanced skills do you really feel like we need to start adding to for newer divers?
For newer divers, I think we do a better job of planning. Okay. Or checklists, things like that. Newer divers, advanced divers need to implement it, but more checklists in the use of checklists. It needs to become standards operating. We're still seeing in the CCR community where people aren't using checklists. So, and that to me is, you fly a plane without doing a checklist? No. Do your checklist. And when we see the incidents that occur, most of the time is they skip the step.
That's a great one, and it's something I had a deep conversation with Dan Orr about as well, and we all know Dan from everywhere. That not enough people do a checklist. We get on the boat and we just throw a bunch of stuff on our back and we throw some crap on our face and we jump in the water. We don't think about it. We don't think about those perishable skills, and having a standard checklist of do this from A to C is huge. It needs to happen more often. That's a great point, and it's something I think I'm going to add to my teaching a little bit more intensely than I already do. So that's fantastic. Well, Andy Davis from the Philippines, he says, how do you feel the standards to create a quality diver have changed since when you became a certified diver until today?
Holy cow. I got 20 years of standards updates that I can show you. I mean, every year we go through updates on we can do this better or do it a different way. On it. It is it's a constantly evolving thing. Let me see, from back when I first got involved, the use of dive computers in training, I mean, it seems so whatever, it's no big deal, but we didn't use them back then, and now we're using them, and now it's involved in every facet of training. The use of ELearning as an educational tool is better than the VHS tapes we put in and watched it. We know they're getting better results. We get better educational results than we did with those videotapes. We now have standards. When TDI started, there was nitrox, and then there was extended range. Okay, and that was it. nitrox and extended range. And then eventually did this thing called trimix. Now we have advanced trimix. And we have heliotrox. So all those additions of that's how we're using helium and all those educational steps were all major advances, just to name a few.
That's fantastic. What have you got on the personal horizon for you? What's the big goal that you're trying to accomplish now, other than outside of ITI?
I was the last 2 years I've reintroduced myself into running. I did a lot of competitive running in my 20s, or in teens and 20s. And I've reintroduced myself into running, and I've been pushing marathons for 3 years now, and I'm really enjoying that. And I'd love to qualify for Boston Marathon in my age group. So that would be a personal thing I'm working on.
There you go.
From there, outside of ITI, yeah, that's primarily it. And eventually getting to the point where I do, where I don't, personal things, just helping my son develop, just make him into a good person.
That's awesome. And that should be a goal of every dad. Absolutely. Yeah. Brian, I thank you so much for coming on and taking the time with us. I appreciate your insights in the industry and your wide and broad expansive knowledge within the industry and what you do. So thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.